It's crazy to me that Modern Horizons 3 is now legal on Magic Online and on Magic Arena, but none of y'all are thinking of playing Mill. I mean, am I crazy to think that this is going to be one of the best archetypes to come out on top once the metagame is settled? And I want you believers out there to be best equipped with what I believe are some of the best sideboard cards to come out post Modern Horizons 3 release from all over, whether these be Modern Horizons 3 cards or cards that Mill has taken advantage of in the past. I want to bring them back and provide you them as arsenal tools to include in your sideboard to then attack some of the Eldrazi-tron nonsense, the Affinity nonsense, heck, some of the Yawgmoth nonsense coming our way. But knowing full well that modern Dimir Mill is, heck, any type of Mill, is the type of archetype that really thrives when a metagame is settled. Doesn't mean though that we can't make good predictions as to what we're going to see in the leagues with all the variety that we're going to get out of Modern Horizons 3. It's going to take maybe 2 to 3 weeks, heck, even a month for the metagame to really settle through challenges, through 5-0 deck lists. A lot of people are going to sift through what's good, and then we can make changes based on that. But of course, this video is going to be your equipment guide for Modern Mill in the next month or so. Now, if you want to see more videos like this, or heck, even some gameplay of me playing some Modern Mill against a lot of these metagame challenges here, you got to subscribe to the channel, ring that bell notification down below, and leave a comment down below what type of deck list you want to see me play. Is it going to be Dimir Mill? Is it going to be the Crab Control, a little bit of Sultai Splash, or heck, am I running some Affinity as well? Gotta leave it in the comments. But let's hop right into my list for the best post Modern Horizons 3 sideboard cards that you can include in your Modern Mill deck. The first couple of cards are honorable mentions, cards that are specific snipe pieces that I think have really niche applications based on what you're trying to fight in your leagues, in your local metagame, wherever you might be testing. Firstly, Confounding Conundrum. Blue and 1 for an enchantment that says, when Confounding Conundrum enters the battlefield, draw a card, so it replaces itself. And whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, if that player had another land enter the battlefield under their control this turn, they return a land they control to its owner's hand. I think this is going to be a great way to fight the Nadu decks. Now, there is the Nadu kind of Shuko combo deck where you keep taking Shuko and putting it in between a bunch of creatures, ramping out a bunch and drawing a bunch of cards. And I think this is going to be a great way to prevent some of that ramping. They can draw a bunch of cards, but at the end of the turn, they're going to be forced to discard those cards. And Confounding Conundrum was a card that a lot of Modern Mill players were thinking was a good way to fight the Titan decks. The problem is Titan is good enough of a matchup anyway. You don't need something like this, but I think it has very niche applications against specifically the Nadu deck that puts a bunch of lands out, just draws a bunch of cards and just gets out a bunch of value. I think there is value in this, but again, it's really, really niche. So keep in mind when you're trying to play a card like this. Next one is Spreading Seas. Just because of the amount of powerful lands that are entering the format, I think we're going to see a lot of Spreading Seas anyway with Merfolk all over the metagame and just some of the tools that they've gained access to. And I think Spreading Seas is going to have a lot of value just being able to enter the battlefield and replace itself, blue and 1 for an enchantment, enchant a land. But then enchanted land is an island, so this is going to be able to shut off some of the kind of that black land that you sacrifice a creature, you add black, and Ugin's Workshop that, imprinting a 7-cost colorless card into it, and then you can get 2 colorless mana. There's a lot of powerful cards that a lot of folks are going to be trying that I think just limiting some of that stuff is going to provide a lot of value in the long game. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot of decks where a card like this is dead. You just sideboard it out, but at the end of the day, it enters the battlefield and it replaces itself, which I think at a baseline is good enough to look at. And there was a time when Modern Mill was playing a card like this and honestly putting up pretty decent results. I personally want to bring this card back and try it again, and I think it has a lot of merit, and that's really the honorable mentions from there. Next card is going to be Veil of Summer. Now, Veil of Summer, I really want to include this specifically for the free counterspell that blue is going to get access to. Merfolk is going to be everywhere. Now, I will say that this is going to be a defensive spell. A lot of times, because they're going to be bringing in stuff with Vial and, Cavern of Souls, making things uncounterable, generally speaking, we are going to be using this to resolve our own Ensnaring Bridge, our own mill spells. And so I think that's what's going to be more powerful. I don't think we want to really be going counter for counter against our opponent, but really just working to be defensive against some of the spells that are going to be thrown our way. Veil of Summer, 1 green, draw a card if an opponent has cast a blue or a black spell this turn. So in my opinion, there's going to be a lot of Yawgmoth, a lot of Scam running around as well. So that is going to be a great snipe piece against the black decks. Spells you control can't be countered this turn. You and permanents you control gain hexproof from blue and from black until the end of the turn. So permanents you control, our crabs are now protected from fatal pushes. We are protected from thought seizes, and our spells can't be countered. So I think Veil of Summer in the Sultai splash is going to have a lot of merit. And I think a card, I haven't mentioned it in this list, but I think a card like Pick Your Poison could be really powerful as well. Being able to destroy a creature with flying. I think there's going to be, a lot of Nadus kind of running around, and a lot of cards in and around every single deck that are gonna have flying. And specifically, we're going to be able to destroy artifacts, which are going to be really relevant in the upcoming metagame with Kappa Cannoneer. And there will be incidental enchantments. I promise you they're going to be relevant as well. So again, the green splash can actually be really relevant. Especially just having better life gain in general. If we're gonna have an uncertain metagame, that burn is gonna be everywhere. So just having good green cards that just gain you life and do other things, green is just gonna have a good color to have access to in this upcoming metagame if you so choose. Next up is gonna be Supreme Verdict, and I wanted to bring this up specifically because of the crab control deck list that was running around, which I think honestly has so much merit. I actually, in certain ways, and this is without enough testing, I think it's better than the Dimir list. I think there's a lot of merit to just winning with Archive Traps and Crabs and controlling the game through the One Ring and Supreme Verdicts. Now, it's a very hard deck to push because a place out of the One Rings, new fetches and everything. It's hard for me to push this as a new version of Mill without a lot of testing, but I think uncounterable Destroy All Creatures is going to be really, really powerful. There's not a lot of decks out right now that can give indestructible to everything out there. So just wiping out a clear board is going to be really relevant. The colorless decks are getting access to that new counter spell. It's essentially like Hydroblast, Pyroblast, but it counters or destroys a multicolored permanent. So they're not going to be able to do that to this card either. So this is a nice tool against those colorless decks. And heck, even against the Merfolk deck, this is going to be really powerful because they're not going to be able to counter it. Of course, they can have access to Subtlety, but whatever, right? Like Subtlety is not going to stop this card. It's going to stop your other cards from coming through. So they might have access to that to stop your future cards that you play after the Supreme Verdict, but it's not stopping the Supreme Verdict. I think just an uncounterable board wipe is going to be really, really powerful in this upcoming metagame. So I have to bring out and shout out Crab Control. Azorius Mill with Supreme Verdict in the main board, I think is going to be really, really powerful. And it's definitely a league or a deck list that I want to run through. Next up is Toxic Deluge, and I want to shout out like kind of Party Time Austin, friend of the channel here, for kind of putting this my way. I originally just kind of shut this away just because it's a commander staple mostly, but I think there is merit to this because of what he mentions of it being a 3-cost board wipe that doesn't cost black. Now you have Bontu's Last Reckoning, which, very limiting because you don't get to untap. And then Damnation is usually the board wipe of choice outside of something like the X board wipe that I'm thinking of, right, that I can't think the name of right now. But I think destroying all creatures is good, but I think getting around the indestructible is also going to be relevant as well. Heck, with Toxic Deluge, the max that you're probably paying is maybe like 5. You get rid of Reality Smashers, Kappa Cannoneer, and Shieldred, and then you can get rid of everything else underneath that as well. Again, getting around not even Hexproof, the indestructible. Heck, board wipes are going to get around Hexproof, but this is getting around indestructible as well because of the -X. Now, this is going to wipe out your board as well. It's going to clear out your crabs, but I think something like Toxic Deluge could be really good in that sense. You are going to be losing 5 life, but I think in this metagame upcoming, we're going to be losing large chunks of life anyway. It's not going to be incremental. So it's one of those things where like 5 life is either like you're going to take 10 next turn or you can pay 5 right now. It's not going to be incremental points of damage in my hypothesis that we're going to be taking in this metagame moving forward. So I think this could be honestly not a bad option if large creature decks or mid-rangey creature decks are coming out in the metagame. Toxic Deluge is going to be a great way to just pay 3 and board wipe, and honestly just get around some Blood Moon as well, because 1 black, we're usually playing 1 swamp anyway. Pretty reasonable to be casting this, whereas cards like Damnation have really bad downsides in the fact that if you want to play Damnation under a Blood Moon, under a Magus of the Moon, you can't really do that. So the pips are always really relevant because Blood Moon is honestly, like, I honestly think Pawns is going to be really good in this metagame right now with the amount of lands, utility lands that we see coming out. Blood Moon and Ponza are definitely going to be seeing kind of a lot of success in this metagame forward. So a lot of those Ponza players, the Ponza Discord, they're probably eating right now. They're probably really excited with the amount of land strategies that are going to be existing. So something like Toxic Deluge does have that much more viability, although I am saying it has viability against a deck that's going to be playing a bunch of lightning bolts against us. So take it with a grain of salt. I think Toxic Deluge has merit and should be considered in that sense. Infernal Reckoning is the next card that I want to talk about here. And this card specifically, exile target colorless creature, you gain life equal to its power. So against the Eldrazi Tron decks, this is a 1-mana way to just exile a creature, you gain some life off of it. Heck, it's going to take a lot of cards out of the affinity decks as well. It doesn't take Kappa Cannoneer, but not much deals with Kappa Cannoneer, which is why I was kind of talking about the board right before. That thing having Ward 4 is essentially just hexproof. So Infernal Reckoning, I think, is just going to be a great option if we see Eldrazi Tron being a top deck in the format along with Affinity. Infernal Reckoning is just going to be a great piece to gain us life. Imagine Infernal Reckoning like a Reality Smasher. Yes, you have to discard a card, but it's going to be worth it to exile that creature and then gain life equal to its power. Just a lot of value, and is going to be pretty good as an option in your sideboard moving forward. Now, Hurkyl's Recall, I'm actually really high on, because if Affinity is going to be good in this metagame right now, if people are going to be forcing Kappa Cannoneers, then Hurkyl's Recall is an absolute hilarious meme, right? It forces them to play everything out again. Remember that Affinity in Modern is not the Mox Opal nonsense that, it used to be. Although, hot take, maybe Mox Opal could be unbanned in the format. Look, a lot of people hated me for that opinion, but I will try it out here. Hurkyl's Recall, though, forces the slower affinity decks that exist right now to play back to their board and sets them back so many turns. They can't just vomit out their whole hand again, or not to the same, I guess, efficiency that they used to be able to. But they can, but setting them back a turn or two is going to be really powerful with something like Hurkyl's Recall. Get them to commit to board on their swing at their end step. Hurkyl's Recall, bounce everything, really cheap, instant speed, all artifacts target player owns. So it's not, it's not you returning everything as well. So if you have an Ensnaring Bridge, you're not returning that out. If you have a Soul Guide Lantern on the battlefield to deal with an Emrakul that they might have, doesn't return that as well. It's just artifacts that target player owns to their hand. So Hurkyl's Recall, very powerful piece that I think is just going to be very relevant. I think there's options like Rebuild as well. Rebuild, though, I think is all players, if I remember correctly, and it's 3 mana. So it's blue and 2 for an instant that says return all artifacts on the battlefield to its owner's hand. And I think the only relevant place for that is because it has cycling 2. So if it's a dead card and you don't need it at the moment, you could just cycle it away. I think Hurkyl's Recall is just better. Just being 2 versus 3, just very relevant. A lot of times the max mana you're getting to in mill is 5, and a lot more times it's 3 or 4. So just using up all your mana to cast a Rebuild is not great. Whereas with Hurkyl's Recall, you could still on 3 cast a 1-drop and Hurkyl's Recall. On 2, you could cast like a Drown and a Hurkyl's Recall. Just being 1 blue and a colorless is also a lot easier as well, versus maybe some other options you might be thinking of. But Hurkyl's Recall, I think, is going to be great against the affinity decks. One of the last cards I want to talk about here, actually, I believe it's the last card, is going to be Strix Serenade. So if you're playing options like Stir and Scolding, I think Stir and Scolding, for now, is not going to be relevant at all. Until the metagame settles and you can make a definitive call that a lot more creatures are going to have Power Toughness 2, which right now, pre-Modern Horizons 3, as I'm recording this video, it hasn't been released yet, but post-Modern Horizons 3, I think Strix Serenade giving a hard counterspell to any artifact, any creature, any planeswalker is going to be really powerful. Stopping Grief, stopping Teferi, stopping Reality Smasher, Shieldred, Kappa Cannoneer, just any crazy creature that you can think of. They got a 2/2 bird instead. I mean, would you rather a 2/2 bird or Reality Smasher swinging at you? I mean, come on. The trade-off makes sense. And yes, they get a creature out of it, but that's the thing. You're ideally countering a spell that's so dang powerful that the damage the 2/2 bird is going to deal to you over time is never going to be outweighed by the value that you're countering out. That's the whole point. So I think Strix Serenade, especially in the immediate future, if you're playing Dimir Mill, should be in your sideboard as an option. If you're playing white, then you're obviously going to have access to better removal. If you're playing green, you're just going and attacking them at different angles. Like you're playing Pick or Your Poison, Veil of Summers, some life gain. So you're just attacking the metagame from a different angle. But when you're playing Dimir, I think these are the options that you're going to have to stick with in the immediate future. And then ultimately, once the metagame settles and we see other creature decks and other decks like settle at the top, then we're going to be able to make decisions to then tack those, right? Whether it be Strix Serenade in the main board, Spell Pierce in the main board, Surgical in the main board. Like a lot of these things we're going to be able to decide once the metagame settles for the immediate future, as you're testing, as you're going into the leagues, as you're seeing a wide variety of decks coming out. Then you're going to be needing to, play something like Strix Serenade in your sideboard. Heck, even in the main board. Imagine the meme. Imagine the true meme here. Your opponent is playing Death Shadow for some god-awful reason. You kill everything on your board. You play a crab. You counter it with the Strix Serenade. And then you swing at them with the 2/2 bird for the win. Just the meme. I'm here to present you with the dream. Now, those are all of the cards that I wanted to talk about today. Let me know what you think about my list down below. Let me know what cards I'm missing. I'd love to hear some of the modern mill tech that you're thinking of. I notably didn't mention some other tech pieces like Ghost Quarters that, you know, a lot of other people like Tybalt of the Red Side are going to be trying out that I think are going to have success as well. It's just not a card that I have generally found success with because I just don't understand how to use it. That's my fault as a player because Tybalt is doing still a lot of really good stuff with the card. And I think a card like that is going to have relevancy just like with other cards that I think you're able to mention. Again, let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know what you're going to be playing in Modern Horizons 3, if not Modern Mill. I'm definitely looking at playing some Affinity in Modern right now and definitely doing a lot of testing with some other decks that you'll see coming in the channel. And if you want to see more modern gameplay post-Modern Horizons 3, you got to subscribe to the channel. Let me know what decks you want to see and hit that bell notification because we're going to be posting some gameplay upcoming and a ton of it.